I am Jeff Foxworthy, and welcome to Gamekeeper Podcast. If you want to learn more about farming for wildlife and habitat management, then, buddy, you are in the right place. Join the Gamekeeper crew direct from Mossy Oak Land Enhancement Studio as they discuss the latest wildlife and habitat management practices, news, and, of course, hunting. There's no telling what you'll learn, but I'm going to tell you, I bet it's interesting. Enjoy.
We're live in 3, 2, 1.
All right, everybody. Boy, here we go. It's this is going to be a podcast about a really interesting. What was that? About a really interesting subject. It's very relevant because we keep seeing and hearing about all these sharks and off the coast of Florida right now.
Is that what we're talking about?
It's kind of out of our wheelhouse, but yeah.
It's a little bit out, but it's we're talking about we're doing these bonuses on different species. We did bluegills.
Oh yeah, we sure did.
Yeah, we got crappie coming up. We did catfish a couple of weeks ago.
So what are we talking about today?
Well, sharks.
Sharks.
And we've got Toxie. I'm looking at you. This
So
guy.
There's sharks. Have you seen any sharks in the Tom Bigby out here?
I have not. But
Bull sharks.
I guess the locks may stop.
Maybe they're up Lion Creek and someone caught one on a trot line.
But we're gamekeepers. We're outside all the time, and guess what? A lot of us fish too, and a lot of us go to the beach and fish. So this is
That's
right up our alley.
Very relevant.
in
for
the
us,
spirit
I
of
mean,
transparency, I just got back with my whole family, grandkids and all, on the beach
I just got back Tuesday.
in Florida, very close to where the epicenter of all this recent news
activity.
Yeah, I think we'll learn today about the activity. I think the activity's probably always there, but
Sharks are always there,
things
I would
happen
think.
this time of year.
Yeah. So let me tell you about our guest. So our guest is Tom Rowland. Can we hit the horns?
Yeah.
Here we go.
Right. Thanks for being here.
And look, I've been following this guy for a while. He is. Let me just
Does
tell
you
you.
fit? Isn't that kind of creepy when he says that? I guess in today's modern media, it just kind of means, we'll follow what you're
Yeah.
doing there. But I've been following this guy for a while. Sounds kind of creepy.
Tom's got a lot of followers.
Well, I didn't say stalking, but he is the host of the Saltwater Experience TV show, which is in its 20th season, and it's been on a bunch of different major networks. And guys, he's more qualified to do a podcast than we are.
Yeah, maybe he can help us out with ours.
Yes, he's done over 800 podcasts. He was a fly fishing guide in Wyoming, and then he moved down to the Keys, and he's been a guide. He works over 300 days a year fishing. And
Yeah, watch him, because he's been stalking you because he wants you to guide him somewhere.
The question's coming.
It's coming.
It's
I
coming.
mean, it's
Tom.
just,
There's no doubt
just
about
letting
it.
you know. You
That's
probably
really why this podcast exists.
you will have said yes before you realized you did it, and it's kind of a hypnosis thing he does.
Yeah. Tom, this is your turn to talk. Now go ahead.
Well, I appreciate you guys having me, and I can tell you have a good time when you're doing this, and that's what it's all about. I'm glad to be here. And the shark issue is front and center because of the recent news, but that doesn't mean that the recent news is recent news. We've been talking about the shark overpopulation for years now, and we can go into like what that looks like, but I guess as you get more and more sharks, and also the other side of it is more and more people, you're going to have more and more encounters. Unfortunately.
Yeah, he makes a good point. And Tom, I tell you how this kind of got on my radar. It was way before this 30A event, but so several years ago, I got to go to the Keys and I fished with a guy. I think he said he knows you, Craig Brewer.
Oh yeah.
And he and I have become friends, and he's been up here hunting a time or two, and I've just kind of fallen in love with tarpon. Mm-hmm. And so I follow a bunch of pages, and I'm hearing people say that some of these guys saying that over half of the fish that they hook and fight end up getting eaten by a eaten by a shark, and that's just horrifying.
Happened to us this weekend.
And are you hearing stuff like that down there?
Well, I think that if over half of the fish that you're hooking are getting eaten by sharks, probably you're doing something wrong. First of all, you shouldn't be fighting them that long. Secondly, if they continue to get eaten in that spot, you need to move on. Mm-hmm. There is just like there in hunting, there are ethical ways to hunt, there are ethical ways to fish. There are ethical ways to deal with the shark overpopulation and the shark increase in predation on your fish. And it's your responsibility as a responsible ethical angler that whether it's tarpon or red snapper or whatever you're fishing for, if the limit for example, say there's a fish that there's a limit of 2, and you go out there and you're fishing and you get 20 eaten, well, that's 20. You didn't get 2. You've now gotten 20.
Yeah.
So if you're a guide or an angler or a weekend guy, seems to be the ones that are the most susceptible to this, because a guide has a lot of different spots, right? Like a guide can go, and if the fish are getting eaten every time he hooks one, it's time to move on. He got plenty of other spots to go to. A lot of the weekend guys, they got 1 or 2 spots. And if the sharks are real bad on one spot, they're just going to hope that the next one they can get it in a little faster. But honestly, I don't like that personally from like my perspective of being a guide and trying to protect the resource. That seems like you just fished over the limit, like you just took 20, right? So I think everybody, we all have some responsibility in this too. But to your point, there is a lot of shark predation on recreational anglers' catches, regardless of species, more than I've ever seen before in my entire career, which my entire career isn't even that long, 20, 30 years. I mean, there are guys that have been fishing way longer than me, and they're saying the same thing. And then that is just a blip in time, right? Like 100 years. Well, were there more sharks 100 years ago? I don't know. Those are things that we don't really know. But from every fishing guide that I know that operates from Maine to Key West around to Galveston, Texas, and then the people that are going and fishing in the lodges in Mexico and also in the Bahamas, yellowfin tuna fishing all the way across from the Florida to the Bahamas, and then all the different types of fishing that they're doing in the Bahamas, every single one of those guys is saying the same thing. More sharks than they've ever seen.
Wow. Lanny, did you have an encounter recently with one?
We had one snapper that got bit on the way up, and it was a child that was retrieving it up, and it didn't come up as fast, but we did move after that, and then later hooked into probably a 7-foot hammerhead, and had to cut him off. So yeah, but it's pretty consistent from my experience too, of the little bit that I do get to go down to the Gulf Coast here. Definitely more. They've always been there, but you're hearing a lot about it a lot more. So I guess what Tom's saying is right. There's more occurrences. There's got to be more sharks.
Yeah, I have very little experience. I'm probably lucky to go every other year, but I've been going since I was a kid, and you hear every time you go, it seems like it's stepped up. You know, the guide's like, "Dadgum, these sharks, we got to move." It's just gotten worse. Tom, are there any like studies or peer-reviewed anything out there yet? Are people studying that?
There have been some studies. I had this guy on my podcast named Congressman Rob Whitman, and he is a congressman in Virginia, and Virginia does touch the ocean up there, and he's an avid fisherman, and so he started this thing called the Shark Act, which is it's supposed to be some legislation to what he referred to is to deconflict sharks and recreational anglers. So I never heard that word before, to deconflict, and it kind of sounds super political to me. And I like Rob, I like what he has to say, but I'm cautious when I hear things like that. Like I don't know what that word really means. And we've seen that with other things that you don't know what it really means, and the next thing you know, there are repercussions that you weren't expecting. I'm for deconflicting sharks and anglers as long as we maintain our right to go to places. Like I don't like restricting access. That's kind of the hill that I'm going to die on as far as fishing rights. I don't think that restricting fishermen's rights to go to certain areas, I don't think that's the solution, ever.
No.
And so I get cautious when I hear things like that, and I ask him straight up, I'm like, does this have anything to do with restricting access to certain areas? And he assured me, no. Of course, that's the original intent, right? And so a bill or law or whatever can go through lots of evolutions and then go somewhere else, and you get something that you weren't really expecting. So that's what I'm cautious of, and I would tell him, in a conversation, that I'm cautious about that, and I would want to before I fully supported something like that, I would want to know that it wasn't going to restrict our access, because I think that's the most important. If you restrict access and people just can't even go to certain areas anymore, then ultimately nobody even cares about that area anymore, and nobody cares about what's going on in that area. And that's when bad things happen, I think.
How would that help the situation? I mean, as conservationists, we're supposed to make an impact,
Well,
Sounds like we need to start eating sharks.
Well, I mean, listen, there is a solution out there.
Yeah.
If there are too many sharks and we want less sharks, there are people that are really, 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 really good at catching them.
Yeah.
They think about it. All you got to do is put money on what that shark is worth and open it up to the commercial fishing, and they will catch them. I mean, they are so good at it.
Mm-hmm.
They are so good at it. And if they are valuable, they will become even better at it. And the tactics and the gear that they're allowed to use has been restricted. And, I think that's one of the reasons why.
Why was it restricted? Because of bycatch, or, I mean?
Well, I mean, let's just say, so when you watch the Discovery Channel and on Shark Week, they're going to tell you that there is what they've been telling us for a long time. And for a while, I believe that it was true. There is a global decrease in the number of sharks. But this is where I've had a number of these conversations with lots of different people on my podcast that are shark experts, from divers, spear fishermen, these guys that go down and actually feed. You'll watch on Instagram or YouTube or something, and they'll be feeding these giant tiger sharks, and they look super gentle, and these guys really know what they're doing, and they interact with these sharks every single day, and they are really good at what they do. So you'll have their opinion. You'll have a spear fisherman's opinion, where they're out there literally trying to make a living spearing fish and putting them in a restaurant. That's how they get paid. And there's a whole industry of people that do that. These people are having different encounters with sharks. They're trying to eat the fish that they're spearing. They have a certain opinion. You have fishing guides that have a certain opinion. Their fish are being taken. It's making it harder to do the job that they've been doing for a long time. You have recreational anglers. Then you have people that love just looking at sharks, and they have an opinion. And all these people have all these different opinions. And there's one thing that has been pretty standard across the board, is that the one thing that people can't agree on is that there could possibly be a global decrease in the number of sharks in the world. At the same time, there could be a massive upwelling of sharks around the areas that we're talking about, around the coast of the United States. Mm-hmm. And that population could be exploding while the global population is decreasing. Sure. So there are certain people out there that won't even have the conversation that could be even happening, because they just see that the global population is declining. Sharks are endangered and rare, and you should never kill them. But they're not going out where we're going, apparently, because you don't have to be a scientist. You don't have to have a peer-reviewed study. You just look with your eyeballs.
Right.
And there are sharks everywhere.
Are they blaming the global decrease on overfishing, or is there other?
Well, there's a lot of legitimate reasons. Overfishing, for sure, is a reason in certain areas. Water quality could be an issue in certain areas. Lots of reasons that there could be a decrease in the number of sharks globally.
Yeah.
And the same thing could be happening with lots of reasons why there could be an increase in the number of sharks around the United States. And part of another opinion that a lot of these different people have is that some of these people say, well, there's not really an increase in sharks. There's an increase in the number of people going out on the water, and the sharks are being conditioned to these motors, and they're coming directly to the boat. As soon as you're out there, they hear an outboard, they go right to it. Okay? That could be happening. And as you get more and more people going out on the water, you have more and more sharks being conditioned to those things. But what I've seen in and I do think that is happening. I do think that sharks are being conditioned to areas that people fish, outboards, chum in the water, the fish coming up. It's like ringing the dinner bell. There's no doubt that is definitely happening. But what I know is that I could leave a dock anywhere on the East Coast and anywhere on the Gulf of Mexico, and I could either go 2 miles or I could go 200 miles from that dock, and the same behavior is happening. Mm-hmm. So if you're going 2 miles from the dock, yeah, that's very, very believable that the sharks are being conditioned in that area that's heavily fished and heavily chummed, and a lot of people are catching fish, and a lot of fish are getting eaten by sharks. I can totally buy into that is definitely happening. But then there's only a few boats that are going 200 miles from that dock. There's only a few boats that are going out into this other area, and that's the reason they're going out there. They want to go someplace where other people aren't, so the fishing is generally better. Like deer hunting, you're going to walk further than the other guy. You're probably going to see better stuff, or certainly in elk hunting. The further back you go, the less pressure there is. Other people aren't willing to do that. So the same thing is happening in those type of areas, in my experience.
Yeah, and you know, the global population may be on a bit of a decrease, but there's probably certain species that are taking off. You know,
sure.
That would make a lot of sense in my mind. You know, the general public, when you say shark, they're not thinking about all the different species and genus and whatever of sharks that are out there. They're just kind of lumping them all in as sharks. Mm-hmm. But, you know, maybe we do have an increase of bull sharks, tiger sharks, black tips, you know, a lot of the ones we see when we're out fishing.
There's no doubt about that. And there's also no doubt, you know, I like to listen to both sides of I like to, when I have these people on, they spent their whole life studying things. They have a valid opinion. I like to hear what they have to say. And then I like to take my experience of what I have and compare these things. Like what's not adding up here? Like and sometimes there are things that don't add up, but a lot of these guys will have an opinion that there's a lot of things that are going on that lead people to believe that there is an increase in shark population. And so just playing devil's advocate, these are some of the things that they say. Everybody has a cell phone in their pocket. There's more videos of sharks.
Yes.
Okay. We saw a video of the shark that attacked the girl in 38, right? 10 years ago, would we have seen that? Probably not. Probably not everybody could have pulled out their iPhone and gotten a video of that real quick. There's more pictures, there's more videos, there are more TV shows, there are more YouTube channels where people are interacting with sharks. The camera technology has gotten better. We have underwater GoPros that a 12-year-old can buy and take underwater. When I first started my TV show, that was completely unheard of. If you wanted an underwater camera, you're going to invest $100,000 into something that you could put on TV, right? Like the technology, the size, the affordability of all these things has come down. So therefore, we're getting way more footage of these sharks. That I'm following this argument all the way. Like that, I don't have a problem with any of that stuff. And then, you know, after COVID, it was a great thing for the fishing industry because we had a big surge in fishing license sales. We had a big surge in the number of people that are into the sport and interested in the sport because basically there wasn't anything else to do. So all of that, you have more people on the water, you have more, you know, and then there's been a very interesting kind of technology advance in outboard motors. It used to be a 150 was a big outboard. Not anymore. You got 600s. And not only do you have 600s, you can put 4 600s on the back of a boat now.
Good gracious.
And you can build larger center console boats. So a boat that was capable of going 200 miles out into the Gulf of Mexico was a giant sport fisher that cost millions and millions and millions of dollars, right? Now you can get a 50-foot center console that costs $2 million, not $50 million. And so now it's made it more available to some people, right? Like you could probably charter a $2 million boat better than you could charter a $50 million boat.
Yep.
So and that's a little bit of a reach,
No,
but
economics,
there has been a lot of technology that has allowed us to see what kind of sharks are out there. And so I'm following that. I have no problem with that argument. But then there's the behavior of the sharks. And that's where my experience comes in. And it's like, I have never before seen fish in shallow water, in mid-depth water, in deep water, and in super deep water get attacked by sharks like I'm seeing now.
See these people? When the clock strikes 5, it's not the end. It's just the beginning. They have to do these things. They have to do those things. Enter the all-new LS Tractor MT2 and MT2E, a relentless force of innovation. Redesigned with a new hood and cab built for comfort and visibility, with enhanced lifting capacity to get the job done. Making these people the ones everyone else calls those people. Visit your local LS Tractor dealer today.
The Ferminator is the industry's most versatile piece of food plot equipment, allowing plotters to do every step of the process, working the soil, adding seed and soil supplements, and compacting, from start to finish with a single implement. It's hassle-free by design. Set it for the seed size and simply drive the tractor, and the Ferminator does the rest. Check it out at theferminator.com.
So do you think it's a little bit like the bears in Yellowstone? And they get, the more time goes on and our beaches are just packed with people. I can attest to that from having been, that's ridiculous. They're more conditioned and used to people, and the more just kind of like, don't feed the bears, they've become so used to people you could get attacked. Is there a little bit of that going on?
There is definitely some of that going on, and there is a massive, major controversy between groups of people about whether you should be feeding sharks or not feeding sharks, whether you should be diving with sharks and feeding them. And so that's the way a lot of these dive operations will work. They will go down, and you can see tons of Instagram accounts, and they'll go down, they'll feed these tiger sharks, and they'll have like a couple of milk crates zip tied together, and those are all full of fish. Or they'll have a whole trash can full of fish, and they'll even use the trash can to keep the trash can in between them and the tiger sharks. They're supposed to, the dive guide is going to be the one that's going to feed all the sharks. Then there'll be a ring of people around there that are just down there watching, right? They're not shark experts. They just want to get within 20, 30 feet of this, 14-foot long tiger shark. It would be an amazing thing without a cage and all this stuff. And these people are making a great living like this. And there's a lot of controversy between different groups that is not cool. Like, you shouldn't be feeding these sharks. You shouldn't be conditioning these sharks to the same spots and making a living doing that, because you're only going to encounter, sharks. And these guys, like, to their credit, they are very, very, very good at what they do. Kind of like somebody that, I don't know, like the Grizzly Man. Remember that? The Grizzly Man movie? He goes out there, he lives with these grizzly bears, and for a while, you're thinking, this guy really knows what he's doing. And then the movie ends just like you think it's going to. He gets eaten. Right? Like it ends exactly like you thought it was going to. Because you're dealing with wild animals. And sooner or later, if you have this many people interacting with these type of animals, sooner or later, somebody's going to get nipped or worse.
Yes.
And it is happening. And so there's a lot of controversy between two groups that shouldn't be allowed. But then it's like, okay, well, then what should be allowed? Can we chum for fish? Can we, what's the difference? Can we, and like in Florida, you can fish for sharks all you want. We do it all the time. We've been doing it for years. If I do a bonefish, I'll catch a 14-pound bonefish on TV. Nobody really cares. They don't even know what it is. If I catch a shark on TV, people love it. People love it. The ratings are better, and but that's just one of the over 50 different species that we fish. So we're not going to make our show all about shark fishing, but we do a lot of shark fishing. And in order to shark fish, you can go out in a boat and you can chum sharks. You take fish carcasses and put them out there, and the sharks are coming in. They have a lot of millions of years of evolution coming to tell them that when they smell that in the water, they should go check it out. They might not eat it, but they're going to go check it out. You're going to see it. And if you set up in the right spot, you can bring a lot of sharks to the boat. That's completely legal, and you can do that. And a lot of the places where I'm shark fishing are 2 feet deep, because I want to see the fish. And it's a whole new experience for a lot of people where you see these sharks coming in, you're sight casting them. You're picking, I don't want to catch that one. I want to catch that one right there. And you throw your bait in front of it and you catch that one. It's really fun. It's amazing. You're not supposed to chum from the beach. Okay. So I could be.
I mean, that makes good sense.
Well, it seems to, right?
If you're swimming, I
the
guess.
chum obviously brings sharks to the chum. And so there's a lot of, like, as we're talking about why is there so much controversy here? Because you have a lot of different groups, just like you would in any kind of hunting. You have a lot of, you got people that like to hunt in tree stands. You got people that like to hunt on foot. You got people that want to, don't see any problem hunting over a corn pile. You have other people that don't see any problem hunting high fence. You got all these different things, right? And you're trying to manage this to keep everybody happy to a point. And then you're dealing with creatures that can literally rip you in half. Mm-hmm. So there is a lot of controversy, and everyone that is making a living at it has their opinion that is based in how can I continue to make a living at this? Pretty much. I mean, a lot of people aren't going to tell you that because they're going to frame it as they're interested in the shark or this is what they think the best way is. But very few of those people are going to say, I don't think what I'm doing is right, and I'm going to stop doing it tomorrow and not make any more money doing this. So you have a lot of different opinions, and where that becomes tricky is, what does the state do? What does the government do? What is whoever, is it federal waters or state waters, and what's the right call here?
I don't know.
Wow. So you could go and chum up sharks and catch them and then leave, and a few minutes later somebody in a dive boat pull up to that area, not knowing that you had just been there, I suppose. But
yeah,
I mean,
and the other way around too. You could go and dive and feed the sharks and look at them and have a ton of them in there, and then a recreational fisherman shows up and starts catching stuff, and they eat everything they catches. So it could happen either way. So and the same thing is happening with Goliath grouper, by the way. There's a whole idea of dive operations that want to go down and they want to see this incredible creature. It's a 400-pound fish or bigger. It's massive. The whatever TV you're looking at, it could put it in its mouth. Like, unbelievable. It could eat one of those deer heads behind you. It's an amazing giant
I've seen
fish.
one. They're
and
huge.
they want to look at it. Okay. Well, a recreational fisherman, they can't keep them. They are protected, and they're eating a lot of their fish that they're getting. So they don't particularly like them. And they say, you have one group that says, oh, we love the Goliath grouper. I'm making so much money by bringing people out here and showing them these things. And the other group is saying, I really don't like the Goliath grouper. They're overpopulated and we should put a season on.
It seems like ethics have changed a little bit over the years. I don't know, this may be a bit of a sensitive subject, but growing up, it seemed like more people were just deathly afraid of all snakes. Now as time has gone by, the stigma, the taboo-ness with snakes in general has subsided a little bit. You've got folks that don't kill every snake they see. I kind of lean in that direction. And you've also seen that with sharks. When I was a kid and you would charter a trip and somebody would reel in a shark, somebody would pull out a .38 and shoot it in the head and then release it. And then it changed. But you always heard about different cultures eating sharks and shark fins, and that's what makes the populations diminish. But then suddenly that kind of went away. And for good or bad, I'm not sure. I'm not really here to have an opinion on that. But that probably also has a drastic, that can cause differences in populations. If every single shark that gets caught, for the most part, unless somebody wants to eat it, is released now. But I know is
it's completely legal to kill a shark in Florida and eat it, and sharks are perfectly fine to eat.
Pretty tasty.
If you had a black tip shark and a cobia, and you had somebody that knew how to cook them, I don't think you'd be able to tell the difference between them.
Lanny just caught it.
Cobia is like my favorite fish in the world, and I've never eaten shark.
Did I show you my
Speaking
cobia?
of cobia, Lanny caught one last week in a ling.
And a shark didn't eat it.
And This was just, it's pretty amazing that he caught one.
What? Bobby?
Yeah, it was
Just
almost
because
big enough to keep.
you're a green trout guy. I mean, come on.
But yeah, I mean, just the last time I went to the beach, we chartered a half-day deal where you just kind of troll up and down the beach and target mackerel and whatnot. And I could not believe the number of sharks I saw right on the beach with people swimming around and sticking their feet in the water.
And really, there probably on that particular day there were 0 encounters.
Probably so.
And so, with drones and other things, we can see that happening now. Does that mean it's never been happening before, or
I don't think so.
It's always been happening?
Well, I mean,
right? And depending on the time of the year that you go, like we were talking about tarpon, right? So there's certain times of the year where you're going to go certain places and you're going to see a ton of tarpon. Then you go back there a different time of the year and you're expecting to see tarpon and they're not there. It's because they're a migratory species, just like a bird, just like anything else. They're going to come through and they're going to be gone. There's a migration of sharks in certain areas that they are going. There's going to be tons more of them around the beach than other times of the year, and with drones, with high-rise apartments that we didn't have a long time ago. Now we can see all this stuff with cell phones and everything else. Now we can take videos of all this stuff. And so it is becoming much more common, which this all leads me to the real thing that we're here to talk about today is that with all this technology and the fact that we can see more sharks and video more sharks, how come we're not doing that with Sasquatch? Because there's not. We haven't had that, right? Like with all the game cameras and everything else out there, I'm losing confidence.
Bobby has
Sasquatch
Bobby
is
still
different.
confident.
we gravitate to long-tailed cats, but Sasquatch is equally important.
Well, Sasquatch is like taking a scales with you when you go fishing. Because if you weigh one, you can't lie about it anymore. The scales make a 10-pound bass shrink down to 8 or
Every
7.5.
Every time.
So if you proved it one way or the other, Sasquatch, the fun's over.
Yeah, well, Tom,
I
didn't think you would derail us like this. I thought one of my guys over
it
here
was getting.
I was going to try to work it in there. That's for sure.
So
you guys said you wanted to have a good time.
Yeah, we always do.
Whenever the fishing is really bad, if you start talking about Sasquatch or the possibility of aliens, or I don't know, anything, it typically tends to get better.
Okay, so speaking of aliens.
Oh, no.
Hey, just so you know, we should have warned you a disclaimer. We've got a couple of first-team all-conference ADD members here, and it gets untracked all the time.
So,
Bobby actually caught it. Yeah,
Mac and I were talking about this morning. Sharks have been around. Yeah, I did a little Googling and stuff. Sharks have been around almost twice as long as dinosaurs. Mm-hmm. What is the deal with those weird alien-looking egg cases and the way? I just don't get it. I mean, is there anything else on the planet that has eggs like that other than insects?
I don't know. I don't know that, but I do know this, that they work very well. And obviously that, whatever that, I know the thing that you're talking about, the spiral shape.
Yeah, or what, yeah.
It's a strange looking thing, but it's one of those things that's just a marvel that it's so effective, right? Like if that wasn't effective, we wouldn't be talking about the overpopulation of sharks.
Right.
I have no idea how that works or why, but I do know that if it didn't work, they wouldn't be around anymore.
Right.
So
I need to get on Google.
Tom, let me ask you this. I'm not sure what Dudley was just asking you about that. So when I did a little research, there was this Shark Finning Prohibition Act of 2000.
Okay.
Did that all of a sudden make so people weren't catching these sharks, I guess, in the Atlantic? And did that help contribute to overpopulation or a population?
I would say that any, and I'm no expert on that particular law, but I would say that any time that you're going to change commercial fishing that is going to drastically change the overall take or the overall value of a certain fish, you're going to have more of them.
And
right?
I mean, do you agree that commercial fishing has a much greater impact on fish populations than us recreational folks?
There's not any question at all.
Right.
I mean, commercial fishing
Yeah.
can. I mean, so commercial fishing, like when you say commercial fishing, there are lots of different ways that you can commercially fish.
Absolutely.
A guy that has a Hawaiian sling and is going down and is spearing fish one at a time, holding his breath, is a commercial fisherman.
And so
if he
it's
goes
like
and
a
sells
long
those fish to the restaurant, right? That seems like a hard way to make a living.
Yeah.
Then there's commercial fishing where they have some kind of giant boat that is capable of staying at sea for months at a time, that have the ice stores and everything else. They process the fish on board. They're using purse seines and these other type of fishing tactics that leave zero, that there's a ton of bycatch, very damaging. And, there's no question that some of that stuff needs to be checked, and making sure that the tactics and techniques and equipment make it somewhat, or make it a sustainable thing, right? Like there are people out there and ways that whatever fish is out there, you could catch them all. I mean, it's not like these fish are in big numbers because people aren't smart enough to catch them. Fishermen are really smart, and when you put a value on that fish, and then you take the regulations and restrictions down about the ways that you can catch them, fishermen get real creative about how they do it. And if they can invest money into it, and they can, for example, they got these purse seine boats, and they are trying to use their marine electronics, and some guys like, why would we want to use marine electronics when I could get my friend that has an airplane to fly around and tell me exactly where these fish are? You could see them from the air. Mm-hmm. And so if that makes sense in the financial thing, like, okay, well, the planes are up there and they've spotted these fish, and the boat goes directly to them, burns way less gas, and surrounds them and catches every single one of them. Well, they're that smart, and they figured this out. They know how to do it. They're really, really good at what they do. Our job as conservationists and people that care about the resource is to kind of check and make sure that are there going to be any left if they keep doing that? Mm-hmm. And we almost did that to the redfish. Like that's a means of, the redfish will spawn. They'll get in these big balls and they'll be on the surface. If you're running around in a 25-foot boat looking for them, you might find them. But if you're flying around in an airplane, you are definitely going to find them. Mm-hmm. And if you can then radio to somebody else to surround that school with a purse seine, you will catch every single one of them. And it could be argued that there's very little bycatch in that too, because they're in there eating bait and things like that, and nothing else wants to be around those fish because they either get eaten or get pushed out of the way. And so in some cases, you might have dolphin and other stuff in there, maybe even feeding on the redfish. But we almost took the redfish to extinction when Paul Prudhomme's blackened redfish recipe became super popular, and everybody wanted redfish in the restaurants. And so there was a call to go catch redfish, and there was a price tag put on those redfish to where the fishermen stopped fishing for other things and started fishing for redfish.
Crazy.
That is. Wow.
It taught me so much then, because I did grow up spending a lot of time on the beach around Orange Beach and all. My dad was from Mobile. His brother had a beach house. And by the way, back then between Perdido Pass and Gulf Shores maybe was 30 houses total, and a small 2-lane road. If you walked out in the middle of it, then you wouldn't even see a car. It was straight and flat. You could see for miles. You might not even see a car in either direction. And now, you can't even see the beach because it's just miles and miles and miles and miles of giant high-rises. And so, which leads back to the number of people and them getting condition of that and all that too. But what I was going to maybe think about when you said conservation, it just triggered so many thoughts in my mind. That's kind of what's our role in all this. And here we are, this, wildlife company and camo company and everything we got going on, real estate and everything in Mississippi. But when you talk about conservation, it's just like sometimes it's not that we can actually have any effect on this podcast and all, but it's just if we're raising people's consciousness of the right thing, and I think we've done something important. And so it occurred to me listening that, one, the dollar pressures to feed the world, and then the exuberance, let's just say the naive exuberance of like sport fishing stuff. When you lose the consciousness of the resource and just go all out for the dollar or the experience, bad things are going to happen with Mother Nature. And we don't have, we're lucky, like we're so steeped in like turkeys and deer and doves and ducks and all these things we love. You get a pretty good read on the trend in populations and things in the state of Mississippi, in the county of Clay, or Alabama, or Missouri. But the oceans, that's a tough job. And so you almost don't know you've done too much damage till it's too late. And what I started saying was, I remember it was so hard to catch speckled trout and redfish. And then coastal conservation got involved. And I couldn't believe how fast things rebounded. And it taught me the lesson. I just thought the oceans are too big for this sport fishing to have that big of an effect. Well, I was wrong.
Yeah.
It has a huge effect. And we got to, somehow, and then you got other thing, we got the United States, so we can have our own set of laws here. But you start getting into international waters, I don't even know how that works. But if we don't have I can't even imagine how we could do it and get the world to get along. If we don't have a combined consciousness of the oceans, then we're looking for that to end us. It's okay to just have a general conversation if we raise the consciousness of, hey, the resource. We got to always have the resource and its benefit in the conversation.
Hit the horns for that, Rob. That's a good comment.
Yeah. I was just thinking, I'm in Mississippi, sharks. And then I started thinking it's relevant to everything we've got going on with Gamekeepers. Very,
sure.
very, very.
Yeah.
Well, it's relevant because the shark, just like the redfish, like any species, can be a bellwether for the overall, a harbinger for the overall health of the ocean. Now, on the one hand, I think it's a really good sign that there are more sharks, because the only reason that there are more sharks is because there's more stuff for the sharks to eat. And sharks are just like anything else. You're not going to have a overabundance of anything unless that particular species can thrive, can eat what it needs to eat, right? Otherwise, they'll die. We all have to eat. And so while there is a overpopulation of sharks in the Everglades, for example, the snook fishing is the best I've ever seen right now. And it's a lot, snook get eaten, and it's not fun for your snook to get eaten. I mean, there are places where you can catch a snook and you get it in so fast. We just did a show the other day. We called it combat fishing, and we were it was literally an athletic event of getting this snook to the boat as fast as possible, literally like a 12-pound snook, skipping it across the surface with a bull shark behind it, snapping its jaws, and then pulling it into the boat like a bass fisherman does. and that's the only way that it's going to be there.
That's sad.
That's really sad.
If we let it go right then, it's getting eaten. So do you put it in the live well for a minute or what, to let it catch its breath and let the shark go somewhere else and look for something else and then release it? Like, that's the only way it's gonna make it. But the overpopulation of sharks is not necessarily a bad thing, in my opinion. I think it speaks volumes of the overall water quality is good enough to support that number of fish. The overall predatory diet of that fish is healthy. So there's plenty of mullet, there's plenty of bait fish, there's plenty of other fish that they can eat. Otherwise, there wouldn't be an overpopulation.
Moultrie has pioneered the game management category. Today, Moultrie is one of the best-selling brands of feeders and seeders in the world, and they continue to innovate with new technology that gamekeepers will rely on. Moultrie products are always field-tested and designed for hunters by hunters, combining forward-thinking innovation with time-tested practicality. Moultrie, first in feeders since 1979. All right, so guys, Moultrie is offering our listeners a 15% site-wide discount at MoultrieFeeders.com. Use code Mossy Oak with a capital M, Mossy Oak, at MoultrieFeeders.com and get that 15% discount.
This is Lanny at the Gamekeepers of Mossy Oak. I've been shooting Nosler bullets as long as I've been wearing Mossy Oak. Nosler ballistic tip ammunition is made for knocking deer down right where they stand. Nosler's famous ballistic tip bullet is the key. It has controlled expansion and bone-crushing punch to turn a whitetail's lights out. Bring home more deer this year with ballistic tip ammunition from Nosler. Buy now at Nosler.com.
Tom, is there if you're taking some folks out fishing, and say there's some kids in the boat and whatnot, is there a couple of sharks that if you see that shark, you're telling those kids, y'all don't get up near the edge of the boat? Is there some that scare you more than others?
It's kind of like the snake thing, any shark, because what if you misidentify it, thinking you're safe?
Well, yeah. It's not necessarily that you just see one species of shark, which you can identify from a long way away. I can tell you from a long way away, that's a hammerhead shark because of the angle of its dorsal fin, right? And you don't even have to see very many of them for you to be able to see that. And then there are others that are a little bit harder to identify. It's not necessarily the species as much as the behavior of the shark. There are definitely times where I could show you videos or there's been a lot of videos going around. There was one the other day on Instagram. This guy puts his trolling motor. He gets to the place that he's going to fish. He's probably in the Gulf of Mexico. The water looked a little green. Looks like he was fishing for cobia. Puts his trolling motor in the water, and about 6 or 8 bull sharks start attacking the trolling motor all over the place. And there is behavior where those could be bull sharks or lemon sharks or any shark that's acting that way. If you fall in, you're getting bit. 100%. There is no question about it. If you fall in, you're getting bit. If you take a fish out of the cooler and drop it in, it's getting eaten. If you put your fishing rod in the water and move it around a little bit, it's getting bitten. If you turn the trolling motor on, it's getting bitten. Whatever. If you put the anchor in the water, it's getting bit. Anything that goes in that water is getting bit. So not necessarily species, but behavior. If you see that behavior with any type of shark, it is not where you want to be.
So like feeding frenzy behavior.
Yes.
When you see these,
could be totally natural too. It could have nothing to do with anything that you've done.
Yeah, and it could be you couldn't see it. You can only see so much from a boat.
So Tom, on Instagram, all the time I see people jumping in the water with their tarpon, or maybe a Goliath grouper. As a guide, how does that? Do you think that's dangerous, or is it the situation depend?
I think that anytime somebody asks me, how do you know if there's sharks in the water? And there's like the old thing that I don't know, maybe it was your grandfather told you this, or it's an old little dad joke or whatever. It's like, if you take your finger and you put it in the water and then you put that in your mouth and it tastes a little bit salty, there's sharks in the water.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's
okay,
exactly
so
right.
That's that's kind of the thing. There could be sharks anywhere. But if you're fishing all day long and you hadn't seen any sharks and nothing's eating your fish and you hadn't had any problems with it, it's fine to get in the water, right? And we spearfish a lot, and we go lobstering a lot, and we like to be in the water. It gets real hot in the Florida Keys, and the best way to cool off is to get in the ocean. It's a beautiful, wonderful experience. We go to the sandbars. We people are all over the beaches in Florida, and there are millions of people getting in the water all the time, and you have a couple of shark attacks. It's a shame, and it's not something that anybody wants to happen to them or anyone that they know. That's for sure, but it's kind of like getting struck by lightning almost, that you're outside a lot and maybe somebody that got struck by lightning, maybe.
Yeah, and it's way less chance of that than getting struck by lightning too.
Right.
Yeah.
But I'm not saying that there's not a chance you're going to get bit by a shark, but most people that go to the beach wouldn't have any idea of what an aggressive shark looked like and what a very non-aggressive shark would look like. And then you have other people that know a ton about sharks And they might say, for example, off the South Carolina coast, we used to vacation at the South Carolina coast all the time. There are a ton of sharks out there. The water is muddy. There's tons of bait. Not a great place to swim.
Yeah.
I mean, in my opinion, right?
Brain.
Like,
yeah.
but I went out there, I surfed, boogie board, doing all that stuff when I was growing up. Nobody ever got bit by a shark. But the chances of getting bit by a shark there, in my opinion, are a lot higher than where this just happened. 30A, where the water's perfectly clear, and typically that's a much safer. Like, for example, if we're going to go lobstering and we go someplace and the water is all muddy, and it's a place that I've seen a lot of sharks before, and I know that there's, but for whatever reason the water's really muddy, I don't really want to go in there. If we go another place,
if you don't want to go in there, I know I don't want to get in there.
Well, I mean, if you go another place and the water's super clear, a shark is not necessarily looking to eat you. And I don't think that the shark was trying to eat a person in 30A. I think that the shark, there's food there, and I don't know. Who knows? Maybe that shark does want to eat a person that particular day. I don't know.
You're so much more familiar than us with all the different attacks and things. We just kind of hear them in the news, and it's in the back of our mind. Does it seem to happen where there are a lot of people in the water, where maybe all the activity attracted them? Or does it happen more when someone's isolated? Do you know? Do you think that adds to it anywhere where the beaches are so crowded?
I mean, anytime if you got one person on a stretch of 10-mile beach, there's probably a very little chance that one person is going to get attacked. Right. Now, if you have 1 million people going in the water on that same 10-mile beach, you have the same number of sharks that you did when you had one person on that beach.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Obviously, you got more of a chance for someone to get attacked by a shark. I don't think that, in my opinion, the 30A thing is necessarily directly because there are more sharks.
Right.
I think that person was just at the wrong place at the wrong time.
Yeah.
And
there's a lot more.
It could have happened 20 years ago. It could happen 20 years from now.
Yeah, the more people.
It happened, and it's unfortunate that it did.
I may be. I don't know. Looking at you, I think I'm the oldest one on this. You look pretty young for your experience. But in the 70s, I've spent all that time I've referenced on the beaches, and so mid 70s, as soon as he was old enough, Sonny Jameson had his pilot's license. And we had actually gone before that when we were like 12, 13, 14. They have a little plane there, and the guy would fly you up and down the beach. And I remember him saying it first, and then I saw it. He said, if you saw how many sharks were all up and down the beach everywhere. I mean, literally, you fly 20, 30 miles. He said, I know, we saw 100 and 100. It was just everywhere. Well, that was in the 70s. So it's not like a new phenomenon. That's anecdotal, I realize. Right. But I can tell you for a fact, I saw it once. But there were so many sharks on the beaches back then, but there weren't a fraction of the people.
Mm-hmm. Right. And so maybe there's less attacks, but they've had a whole movie franchise that made millions of dollars. Yeah. Jaws, and scared everybody, and it was about what we're talking about, like rogue sharks, and so that's another thing where they have we can see so much more about what the great white shark is doing. And, when I got to the Florida Keys, I'd ask people, are there great whites here? And they'd say, no, I've never seen one here. Don't know, never seen one. And then you'd hear some fishermen and they're like, well, we were pulling in something, and this, I don't know what it was, big and dark, and it just ate this whole thing, another shark or a sailfish or something. And, you're like, well, what do you think it was? I don't know. Right. But now there are these different groups, and they're tagging these great whites. And now you can go, like O-Search is one. It's it's like O-Search, but the S is a C. And you can go to O-Search website, and you can follow these great whites that they've tagged, and they tag other sharks too.
They name them and stuff. And
they'll name them, and you can see where they go. And so now some fisherman comes in and they're like, man, we saw something out there. And then they go to a website like this and they're like, well, this shark was here. Like it says it was here. Could it have been a great white? And then you had like we were talking about before. Everybody's got a camera in their pocket now, and you take a video of it, and now you can get it to the right person and say, "Does that look like a great white to you?" And the person's like, "Yeah, sure it does. Look at the tail here. It looks just like a great white. I think you saw a great white." And so now you have these confirmed reports, and people realize, oh, there are great whites here. And so there are great whites in places where before people just kind of thought, nah, they're somewhere else. They don't like warm water like this. They like cold water. Well, we've learned so much more about their behavior, and we've learned so much more that is confirmed, right? Like everything else is like before they were tagging these things and before everybody had cameras, and they were unconfirmed. And somebody would tell you, oh, we saw this and that. That's just like saying I caught a 12-pound bass. It's like, really? Let me see a picture of it.
Yeah, Bobby.
And, and they don't have one. And you're like, yeah, I don't know if he really caught a 12-pound
Yeah, I was a little busy. I didn't have time to take
whatever.
So, Thomas, is there a couple of sharks that you like? Boy, I love catching these. I love catching a tiger shark.
I like catching every shark. I love catching every one of them. And in the Florida Keys, like we've talked about a lot of things. It sounds like maybe I might not like sharks. Sometimes I don't like sharks eating the thing that we're really trying to catch. But there's other times where we go shark fishing, and I've even been in shark fishing tournaments that were on ESPN, like the Mad Fin Shark Tournament. That was I was in those in the early years, and shark fishing's fun. It really is fun. And we have in the Florida Keys, we have tiger sharks, hammerhead sharks. Those are the two ones that get the very biggest. The hammerhead will get it up to 13 feet long and probably well over 1,000 pounds. Tiger sharks get even bigger, but I've never seen that. The biggest ones that I see in the Florida Keys are the hammerheads. I've never seen a tiger shark as big as tiger sharks can get. And I don't know, maybe I'm lucky. I don't know. Maybe I'm hoping one day I'll see a really big one, but maybe once I see it, I don't really want to see it. I don't know. You know what I'm saying? Like you see a 15-foot tiger shark. It's not just 15 feet long. It's big around, and that's how those hammerheads are too. As they get longer, they get bigger around, and the whole thing is just giant. But those two sharks are kind of the biggest ones that we see. I don't see the great whites. I'm still waiting to see a great white. I've never seen one in person with my eyes. Now, I've seen these videos of people fishing in the same places that I fish, but I've never been fortunate enough to see one. So I'm waiting for that. But then the real common sharks that we see are the bull, the blacktip, the lemon, the nurse shark, and other ones like duskies and different sharks like that. But we fish for all of those.
Hey guys, Dudley from Gamekeepers here. I want to tell you about the all-new Gunner Dog Bowl. It's designed for home and built for travel. It's customizable, leak-resistant, light on weight, solid on durability, and rust-proof. Like other Gunner products, they're made in Nashville and designed for everywhere. What are some of your favorite eating sharks?
I don't really eat them very much myself, but I do know that the black tip is probably the one that people like to eat the most.
Okay.
So, Tom, one of my favorite episodes I've listened to you about is when you had this character, Mark the Shark, on.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And
he is a character.
One of the things I noticed, and me being a fisherman that loves to tell stories about my fish, I felt a little bit for you there, but he was talking about he had caught a 13-foot some kind of shark, and he said it weighed about 900 pounds. And then you said, I caught one off a bridge, and we measured it 13 and a half feet long. And he said, well, yeah, yours probably weighed 700 pounds. What in the world was up with that? How come yours couldn't have yours was longer? What was the story?
I think it was because it was a different species, right? So I think he was talking, if I remember correctly, I think he was saying that he caught a tiger shark that was longer. And the one person in this world that I would believe 100% on shark weight is Mark the Shark. That guy's killed more sharks than anybody that I know and weighed them. And, what's interesting about him, he is a real character. And one of the reasons why I wanted to have him on, since I've become good friends with him, and I really like the guy. But at first, he's so controversial because he has killed more sharks than anyone, but as I dug into it a little bit, he's also tagged more sharks for conservation than anybody. So there's this weird thing with him. Like, he kills a lot of sharks, but he also tags a lot of sharks. So he wants to kill the big ones, and he puts it on social media, and he says, I got another turtle eater today. The beaches are safe. Beaches are safer today. And he's an interesting guy, but man, he knows a lot about sharks. You should have him on here. He would be an interesting conversation. I'm telling you.
Yeah, Lanny.
I'll hook it up because he's legit, and he is an interesting character because he's got, like, on the one hand, he makes fun of his clients when they get seasick, and films them and makes fun of them. But on the other hand, he takes these sharks and the sailfish and the other fish that he's eating, and he takes them to the homeless shelter and donates them to the homeless shelter. Yeah. So he's got all these things on the different ends of the spectrum. Like, he's just like, he's real, like, extreme on killing things, but he's also real extreme on tagging things and conservation. Just an interesting guy, but he knows more about sharks than about anybody I've ever met.
Yeah, I did enjoy that. And so you caught a 13.5-foot shark off a bridge there in the Keys?
Well, by a bridge. This was on it's an episode of Saltwater Experience. So the day before, I had my dad out there. Actually, my partner, Rich Tudor, and we thought, wouldn't it be a cool show if we brought both of our dads down here and did a show with them? And we did that. And it's the only time that we've ever had both of our dads on the boat at the same time. And we filmed this episode with both of our dads at the Long Key Bridge, and they each caught a couple tarpon, but my dad was catching a tarpon, and this big hammerhead comes up and eats it, right? Or tries to eat it. Scared my dad to death. He's a Tennessee guy. He'd never seen anything like that before. But he knew. But the funny thing is even though you've never seen that before, immediately he said, "Oh, hammerhead!" He'd never seen a hammerhead before in his life, but he immediately identified it, and he knew that thing was coming after his tarpon, and he didn't know what to do about it. And that's a weird feeling when that happens too, because you're connected to that tarpon. Mm-hmm. I watched this happen with my son too. He was about 10 years old, and he's catching a tarpon, and a hammerhead comes to eat it, and it's almost like that hammerhead is attacking you because you're attached to this thing. And my son was they had the same reaction of like, almost like panic, because it seemed like it's happening to you. But anyway, this shark at the Long Key Bridge not only attacked a bunch of our fish, it's attacking it, or one like it is attacking lots of anglers' catches. So we filmed that show with our dads. It turned out great. And the next day, the wind really started blowing. And we thought, well, I don't know what we're going to be able to catch today. I mean, bonefish are out, redfish are out, tarpon out. Like, what are we going to do? We're either going to call it, or we're going to try to catch something else. So we said, I think we could go catch those hammerheads right there at the bridge. And so we caught a big old barracuda, 4 feet long, 5 feet long, and have a couple of those and go out there. And it was the first time that we had intentionally tried to catch one of these hammerheads. And so we get all the gear. We got big rods and harnesses and everything. We're going after it. And sure enough, it wasn't hard. We got it. And it wasn't hard to find it. It wasn't hard to hook it, but it was very hard to catch it, because that fish took us through the bridge. So a 13.5-foot hammerhead, a 24-foot bay boat, we have to go through the same little span of the bridge. And if you've been down there, there's hundreds of those spans. Mm-hmm. And it would be very easy for that shark to go down one and the boat to go down another. The tide's ripping. The wind is, it is blowing 30 miles an hour. It was a terrible day to be out there. And we're hooked to this giant shark. And we ended up landing it. But we went through the bridge and then back through the bridge, and we get out there and we end up with this giant hammerhead, which still to this day the biggest thing that I've ever caught of any species. And we got all that on camera, and it was a cool episode. I got to admit though, the day before, that was probably one of my very favorite episodes, and especially true now that my dad's still alive. Rich's dad passed this year, so we went back and looked at that episode and actually pulled a couple of clips from that episode, when his dad passed, to give him a little memorial there. But that was super cool. You know, those sharks are there. It's real big game fishing, and it's not for everybody. Like I wouldn't just take somebody that hadn't done a lot of fishing like that, like marlin fishing or something where you've caught some big fish before, because that shark was hard to catch. And so like it's so long that one of the things, like if you're fighting a bonefish or a tarpon or something like that, even a tarpon first time, it'll start shaking its head and the line will go slack and then it'll go tight and slack and tight and slack and tight. But it's only throwing like a foot or two of slack in there. What I noticed about that hammerhead is the drag had to be very, very tight. And when it would shake its head, it would do like 6 feet of slack because it's 13 and a half feet long. So
how wide's the head on that thing?
I got a picture of it. Maybe I can show you right now. I mean, really wide.
Yeah, I was going to say.
I mean, this table we're sitting out, I don't think it's 13 feet long.
No, it's probably 12.
Yeah.
So yeah, Bobby, if I had him by the tail, he could eat you right now.
Wow, that's a big fish.
Well, I mean, you know, it honestly.
I wonder how wide the head is on it. I mean, we've caught some small hammerheads before when I was a kid and all, but oh my gosh,
that's it from that day. Now look at the dorsal fin.
Yeah,
the dorsal fin is bigger than I am.
Crazy.
Huge.
Yeah, you know, proportionately,
Long
the head is actually narrow. The body's massive compared to
Yeah.
the head, more than I thought it would be.
I've spent a lot of time under the Long Key Bridge.
Is that right? Yeah. What are you doing down there, lobstering?
Yeah, lobstering.
Yeah.
Well, you know, typically when you're lobstering, you know, that would be the last Wednesday and Thursday in July.
Yeah.
Those guys aren't going to be there.
Yeah.
Like they're going to move off with the tarpon. Like that's what they eat, and that's why they're there.
Wow.
And come later in the year, you don't really see them. We'll see them again in the fall for some reason. There's like a mullet migration that comes back down, and you start to see those big hammerheads again. But they come in and go out, and they could be there.
Hey,
what
about reports of? Seems like back of my mind, maybe I'm dreamed it. Reports of some sharks getting more into freshwater or brackish water.
The bull shark thing. Yeah.
Well, the bull shark is always the one that you hear about, and they do.
They can
go
survive
up rivers.
Yeah,
you know, they go way up rivers, and they've been found, you know, way up rivers, and it definitely happens.
Wow.
I don't know. I would think that there's other sharks that do the same thing. I mean, when we fish in Louisiana, you know, if you go to Venice, you have the Mississippi River that pours in right there.
Right.
And
yeah.
we fish. Like when I'm fishing with my friend Anthony Randazzo, who's a great guide. If anybody ever wants to go down there, he's got Paradise Plus Lodge. It's a fantastic place to go. And Anthony is very, very knowledgeable of the area. And we'll be fishing, and you know, I'm like, this is a kind of cool area, Anthony. He's like, yeah, well, I mean, we're really in the river. And I'm like, really? And he's like, yeah, I mean, you know, it doesn't look like a river to me, but it's just like kind of the river. There's more freshwater coming down than there is saltwater, and we're catching trout and redfish and sharks and everything's in there. And it's just amazing how that particular river will have all these different species in it. It's a fish factory, right? Mm-hmm. But you know, it wouldn't. I mean, of course, there's sharks there.
That'd be cool. Lenny, catch a shark in one cast, and
the sharks are going to go up in there.
Get a flathead on the next cast.
That's right. Yeah, that's a really neat part of the world.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And you were talking about, you know, diving in murky water earlier. You couldn't. I've seen people diving around like those 6 mile rigs where people catch snapper and bait and stuff. And
not me.
And it's muddy. I can't imagine. You know, if you were able to make it clear and see what was underneath and around you.
Well, sometimes
I
it's
bet
murky.
Nobody would want to jump in.
Sometimes it's murky up top.
Yeah,
and
it's like 10
so
feet.
That is true.
You get down, you can see it.
That thermocline.
Not that I've been down there, but a few times. Yeah. Woo. You can see it. You can see it.
Yeah.
It's really amazing.
Then there's a whole industry of people up there that are the commercial divers that go down and weld underwater and do all that stuff underwater. I had a couple of those guys on my podcast one time. What a crazy stories they've got.
Yeah, I bet they've seen some crazy stuff.
Yeah, I bet they have.
I don't know. It's just like, you know, we're fortunate. whatever your personality is and however crazy you are, there's a job for you in this country. Like if you're crazy enough to get in the water at an oil rig, that pays good too. Like those
Real
guys
good.
are hardcore.
What else? What should we be asking him? What are we forgetting, Lanny?
We'd be on. Wait a minute. Now, careful.
I would
you've
think
done such a good. I mean, you've stroked something in all of us, or a light's come on. We'd be here all day. The stuff we don't know, he could answer for us.
Yeah, Tom, we've enjoyed this. Look, with all of our guests, we like to ask them a trivia question, and usually our guest has a chance to win one of our podcast T-shirts. They're very coveted, Tom. But we've got a special prize just for you. So I'm going to turn it over to Mike. What are we doing today?
All right, Tom. So the prize today, if you get this right, is a Star Bright boat cleaner kit. And so,
Is that right? I got one right behind me.
I was thinking to say he's
Probably got a whole closet full of them, Bobby.
Yeah.
Great
Hey,
job,
listen,
great job, Bobby.
I take all I can get for that.
Yeah.
That stuff's awesome.
Starbright is his big sponsor. Right? I thought he would get a kick out of that.
Hey, I'm gonna tell you what, that stuff works good. It
that's
really
what I
works
need.
well.
You need to send him one of these. That's the first time I've had one on, actually.
That's what we'll do.
One of those companion shirts, yeah.
Tom,
We have, these companion. I have to blatant plug. Okay, I'm sorry, but these companions, bamboo T-shirts.
They're nice.
Oh my goodness! If
Doesn't even feel like you
people
have
out there
anything
hear
on.
this, mossyoak.com. I mean, this is the best, and I'm a T-shirt hound. Y'all
They
know
feel-
that.
He's a
This
T-shirt
It's the best
aficionado.
T-shirt I've ever put on in my life. And that's
Yeah,
saying a lot.
they're a loose fit, but they
Yes.
feels like you're being hugged.
Well, in
I
this,
know that sounds weird.
I know
but
that's comforting
man,
for you.
well, the heat and humidity. I mean, I love cotton stuff, but you just can't do it anymore. This is actually better than the athletic stuff. This bamboo is amazing.
All right, Tom. We're going to send you one of the companions bamboo
Okay.
shirts.
I like that bamboo stuff. That's nice. I've had a couple of those T-shirts before. They are very comfortable.
This is a good one for hot weather.
Today's trivia is brought to you by Sheffield Financial. Explore swift, effortless, and convenient financing for power sports, outdoor power equipment, and trailers. Fueling your pursuits in hunting, fishing, and game keeping. More details at sheffieldfinancial.com.
Who are we playing for?
so we're playing for Old T-Roy.
Old T-Roy.
That could be a number of people.
We might be kin to him.
Yeah.
And,
So
and the prize is a Drake summer shirt.
Oh.
yeah. So old T-Roy, just let us know what your size is. Drake will ship that.
A
shirt
Drake
to you.
summer shirt?
Yeah, button down.
Okay.
Short sleeve. Jim Ronquest, he's
Yeah,
always so kind.
Drake has some great new products.
Yeah,
coming
they
out,
do.
too.
Yeah,
They
yeah,
So-
they do.
So the question is, Mississippi and Alabama share the same freshwater fish, which is the largemouth bass. But the question is, what is the Alabama saltwater state fish?
The saltwater state fish.
Think, Tom.
I mean, I went to the University of Alabama, so
Wait.
Oh,
Wait
Bobby
just a
Cole.
minute.
Well, hang on though.
Roll Tide.
Before you place any judgment, I also pay tuition at Auburn.
Ah, there you go.
That's like Bobby. See,
I
Bobby
might have-
went to
I
Auburn,
might
but he
have
paid.
either.
Bobby paid tuition at Mississippi State.
And Auburn.
That breeds a little loyalty when you write a check.
So what I know about Alabama is that they have some incredible fish there, but which one would the state pick as their state fish? Is it the red snapper?
It is not. That was a very good guess, but
Yeah, I would've
it's
thought it.
actually the tarpon.
Really?
Is it the tarpon?
You
Yeah.
kidding me?
It
I
is.
would have never
Wow.
gotten
I would
that.
have never
it
thought
is.
that.
I would have guessed
Okay,
snapper.
well, they do have good tarpon fishing. The whole panhandle of Florida has really good tarpon fishing and really discovered by the fly guys in the last, 15 or 20 years.
Yeah, it's
Wow.
been coming on. They've been catching some big ones off the coast of Mississippi.
Yeah, that's just
Kinda
amazing
crazy.
though that it's the state fish.
Yeah.
The tarpon, and then only
my-
recently.
I'd have
That
said
was-
the speckled trout. I don't
Snapper was my guess.
I would have
though.
too. I would have said speckled
know. I would have
trout.
said speckled trout.
Well, I was about to say redfish,
Yeah, that's a good
but
one
then
too.
I kind of thought, well, maybe offshore. They have good. I mean, that there's not a lot of Alabama that has a coastline. But
we need to ask
they
Bobby.
have
He's
access
so
to some really great fishing.
Yeah, they do a really good job. I
Bobby.
would
You're
say
cruel
great
on these
fishing.
questions because you have time to research it.
Yeah, and it should have been. He's from Florida. Why didn't you ask him the
But he
state
went
fish
to
of Florida?
Alabama.
I wouldn't have
didn't know
known
that.
the state
You know
fish
what?
of Florida either.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, that would have been even harder. They got so many.
You know,
What is the state fish of Florida? Does anybody know?
The lobsters.
Mac, we got
It's
a researcher.
the sailfish.
Is it sailfish?
Yes.
Good choice.
Can anybody guess the Louisiana state fish?
Got to be the red.
It's
Gotta
red
be
Gotta
the
be the
redfish.
No,
It's probably the alligator gar.
it's got to be gar or grinnell maybe.
Speckled trout.
Speckled.
Speckled
There
trout.
you go.
Oh, that's surprising.
Well,
That makes sense.
That's good.
Yeah.
Could anybody tell me why, as you go from Florida around to Louisiana and then down into Texas, that it is totally acceptable and fine to use a spinning rod in Florida, and as you get to around to about Venice, it's about half and half, and as you go to Texas, it's only bait casters.
Interesting.
I don't know.
Hadn't really thought about that.
It's got to be a joke or something.
It's
gotta
not well, I kept waiting for the punchline, and I was like, how is it that you think you could throw a bait caster into a 30-mile-an-hour wind better than you can a spinning rod? But they will argue with you tooth and nail that that's the only way. They don't. I mean, I don't know. When we were on the redfish tour, I just could not figure that one out, and it is definitely a geographical thing.
Oh yeah.
It's not a fishing technique thing. It's a geographical thing.
That's interesting.
I'm just my greatest hardcore fact on fishing is like you can't catch one without a hook in the water. That's about the
That
best.
is good. How about you
either
can also
rod.
take this one to the bank? You can say the one that I kind of rely on a lot. Don't leave fish to find fish.
Yeah, 100%.
That's a good one. That's a good one for hunting too.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, it is. So how does a guy that was a fly fishing guide in Wyoming and Montana end up going to the University of Alabama?
Well, I went to the University of Alabama first.
So he went over, Bobby. He went over and got smart, and he taught him to go out west.
See,
Come on.
no, I don't know. My first year of Alabama, I had a yearning to go out west, and didn't know really why. I wanted to fly fish. Didn't really know even what that meant. I'd never had anyone teach me how to fly fish, or didn't really. I'd never even seen a fly rod much before. I remember my grandfather had one. I think I broke it and put it back in the closet and didn't ever tell him. But you know, that was my introduction to fly fishing. But I used to, you know, look in the back of Outdoor Life magazine and you know, see these, you know, articles and stuff about people backpacking and going and fly fishing in these beautiful mountain streams. And I don't know why I wanted to do that. I just wanted to do it. And I had an opportunity to work in Yellowstone National Park, and I worked at Lake Hotel in Yellowstone National Park, and I could fish the Yellowstone River, and that's kind of basically taught myself how to fly fish there. And the next year I became a guide in Jackson, Wyoming. And all this, you know, for a number of years, I would just do that in the summer times, and I'd go back to school and then wanted to fish year round. And I was trying to figure out a way to fish trout year round. And I don't know, I tried to spend a winter in Jackson, Wyoming. And, you know, I grew up in Chattanooga, Tennessee, so I'm a southern guy. And a winter in Jackson, Wyoming, I ran as far away from there as I could possibly get, which I ended up in Key West, Florida.
There you go.
And it's too cold out there, man. I mean, for me, it's fine for, you know, a couple of weeks or a couple of months or whatever, but the extended living out there, it was hard on me. And, you know, but my kids like it. That I have two boys that graduated from Montana State, and they live in Bozeman, and they don't mind the winter. But Bozeman actually is considerably warmer than a little bit south of there. Jackson and that whole Yellowstone area, that's like an ice box. Mm-hmm. It gets really cold. West Yellowstone, if you look at the places in, you know, the weather map or something, I mean, a lot of times West Yellowstone is like the coldest place in the country. Mm-hmm. And I don't know why. Just a couple 100 miles north, and it's warmer, but it is. But they get 20 below, 30 below out there, and that's super cold.
That is really cold.
So anyway, that's how I ended up in Key West, and then it made sense because once I was working for somebody in Wyoming, and so just making a day wage, and there's only about 150 possible days that we could fish out there at that time. And so in Key West, I own my own business, and I could fish 300 plus days. And, if you could get that much business at first, certainly I couldn't get that much business. I mean, I had to pay somebody to go fishing with me, Nobody wanted to go with somebody that didn't know what they were doing. But, eventually you bumble around enough and you find some things and develop a clientele. And most days you can go fishing down there.
Wow. Well, Tom, we've really enjoyed having you on. Lanny, you got any other questions?
No.
Lanny could stay on with him all day. Lanny loves that salt.
I just want to say, 99% of our listeners are hardcore hunters. But if you ever get a chance, budget to go on a saltwater fishing trip.
Absolutely.
No matter where you go, just do it. It's a great experience.
You're hunting.
You get to
Well,
bring
that's
up,
what a lot of hunters might not realize, and that was the draw to me for the fly fishing at first. And it doesn't have to be fly fishing, but there are types of fishing where you see the fish in the water before you cast to them. And growing up in Tennessee, I never saw this, and it wasn't until I got out to Wyoming, Idaho, and Montana to where you're seeing the fish in the water. And then you're like, oh, well, there's one. And you walk right up to it and you scare it because they see you too.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're kind of like, oh, okay, this is kind of like hunting. So I see another one over there. Now I'm going to sneak up a little bit. And you do that one wrong too. And they take off. And then the next thing you know, you're crawling on your hands and knees, behind the grass. And then you're trying to make this cast to them. And it's really fun. And I really got that because I liked hunting when I was a kid. I hunted with my dad growing up, and I liked hunting, but with fishing, there was, if you're catch and release trout fishing, you can do that all day long. With hunting, you get your limit, you got to go home. And so I was one of the first things that I really fell in love with fishing was the sight casting hunting. And then if you really want to see what that's like, going to Louisiana and red fishing down there where you see them in the shallow water, or even more so in the Florida Keys where the water's super clear and you see everything we do is like that in certain types of fishing. Like in the shallow water fishing that I made my living at, you have the guide, he's on the back, he's poling the boat, you're seeing the fish, and you're literally sneaking up to them and hunting them just like you would a bow or anything else. It's fun. And I think, most hunters like fishing. Not all fishermen like to hunt.
Mm-hmm.
True, but that's our first cousin to hunting is fish. Hunting and fishing.
Oh yeah,
just rolls off the tongue, and
it does.
They go hand in hand.
Look here, you're making me want to just go hook the boat
Bobby.
up and go.
He loves to fish.
Here we go.
It's a lot of fun.
10 o'clock in the morning.
Mac,
Bobby's
have you
going
got
to be
anything
gone
to
again.
add? You good? I tell you, this has been interesting. Tom.
Oh,
Very
it's been
interesting.
great.
Yeah, Tom, we're going to do this again.
Really enjoyed.
Well, listen, I hope we covered what you wanted to. I would tell you right away, I'm not a shark expert, and I have seen a lot of sharks and caught a lot of sharks, and I'm around a lot of sharks, but there's a lot to learn about all of this stuff. And I feel like that's one of the things that I like the most about, about the hunting and fishing is that pretty much every time I go, I learn something new.
Yes.
So I don't really consider myself an expert on it. And there's certainly plenty of people that have studied these things and have all these like peer-reviewed stuff like you were talking about before. Mine is just based on my experience. And then I try to, like a lot of things we talked about today weren't necessarily my opinions about the subject, but like I just like to listen to the things that other people that have studied these creatures a lot and just listen to what they have to say and then try to form my own opinion about
Yes.
No, it makes perfect sense.
Yes.
Yep, it does. We're going to get you on again.
For sure.
Guys, y'all go.
Anytime, fellas.
Go Google Tom Rowland, and he's got on YouTube, there's stuff to watch. You can follow him on Instagram. He's got a podcast, so I would highly recommend it. So
Thank you.
I'm going to.
All right, why don't you say goodbye, Dudley?
Goodbye, Dudley.
Get us out of here, Rob.